Hello, welcome to another video presentation of chesslecture.com. I am International Master Attila Turzo from Hungary. In this lecture we will study the classical system of the pirc'a defense. The starting position of this system is appears after white starts with e4, black plays d6, white plays d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, black plans to play bishop g7 and then have pressure on the center. In this moment white can choose in many different setups. The classical system starts with knight f3. It controls the center and then try to develop all the minor pieces and later starts greater plans. After knight f3, black plays bishop g7, continuing his plan. And in this position, possible to play bishop e2, which we studied already in another lecture. But after bishop e2, black is able to play bishop g4 to pin the knight and exchange his light square bishop. If white wants to prevent this plan, then he can place here h2, h3. The positions and variations which appears after this move, that's the theme of this lecture. After h3, black can continue to play with castling short, and what to do with the c8 bishop, that's the question after h3, because no more available to develop to g4. The plan for black will be to play b6 and then bishop b7, develop the bishop to the square, and having heavy pressure on the e4 square, and then later maybe attacking the center with c5 or e5. After castling, white cannot play bishop e2 going to the classical system of the bishop e2 variation, because now black has a very strong move c5, and if white captures on c5, then black can play queen a5 with the idea of capturing back on c5, because also certainly knight takes e4 because of the pin on the knight. And this variation gives easy position for black. If here white plays d5, then because he lost the tempo with the h2, h3 move, black can play b5 and threatening b4 and winning space on the queen side, and white cannot capture with the knight because then black captured the e4 pawn, winning back the pawn and having a nice center and also half open b file. If white captures with the bishop, then also possible to capture on e4, because this sacrifice will be a good one, because after white capture back with the knight, queen a5 wins the bishop. White can come back with the knight to c3, but after bishop takes c3, b takes c3, the queen can capture on b5. White won back the pawn, and also he has a better pawn structure, and he has generally a very good position. So, because of this idea, white logically will play here bishop e3, preventing the c7, c5 move, because now it's covered by two pieces. And what can black do here? I think first we can play a6 with the idea maybe we can attack on the queen side and then develop the bishop to b7. So not with b6, which originally I told, but can follow also the plan to winning space on the queen side, so can prepare it with a6. Most of the time white will not allow b5, because after b5 black would have a very nice position, but white will play a4 to preventing b5 by controlling the b5 square with the pawn and the bishop and the knight. And what should black blacks do. I think black should play b6, just continuing his development, planning to play bishop b7. The knight may go to d7, because on c7 it would block the bishop, but on d7 it has a fine position. So after b6, what can white do? He can choose here on different moves. I think bishop e2 looks the most logical, just continue development. But also in this position, white can play aggressively, but by e4, e5. Okay, and attacking the knight. But I think this is not a big problem for black, because we just go back to d7 with the knight. If white captures on d6, then we can simply capture back with the e pawn, and then on the e5 we have nice counterattack. Even we can capture back maybe with the c pawn, planning to play e7, e5, and maybe f7, f5, exposing some weaknesses and winning more space and having nice position. But of course white don't want to capture on d6, but his idea is to play e6, maybe creating some counterplay here or some attack. But if black plays correctly, then this will be good for black. Black should capture on e6, then knight g5. White attacks the pawn, but just playing back the knight to f6, opening the diagonal for the bishop to defend the e6 pawn. And sometimes in this kind of position, white starts some attack on the king side with either maybe bishop e2 and then h5. But I think black has enough power to get nice counterplay. The best to do is, when the opponent starts attack on the wings, try to attack against the center. So in this position, black plays c7, c5, attacking the d4 pawn. And if h5, just then capturing on d5, bishop takes d5, and can capture the h5 pawn, g takes h5, and with the plan to advancing the d and the e pawns. I think this gives more than enough counterplay for black. d5, knight c6, and then later e5 or d4. That gives good possession for black. Let us go back to the position after black played b6 and find a more solid move for white. In this position, white can continue with bishop e2. Then black plays bishop b7, attacking the e4 pawn, which is now under fire by two pieces. White can defend it with knight d2. If white would play d6, d5, trying to save the pawn and also blocking the bishop, then it's important for black to play c6 with the idea to exchange of the pawns and then develop with knight bd7 and maybe rook c8, and then get counterplay on the half open c5 if the pawns would be exchanged later by on c6 or on d5, depending what white will do. So here white plays knight d2, and how should we continue? I think after this, black can continue to play, can develop with knight c6. It may look a little bit strange to blocking his bishop, but this knight attacked the d4 pawn, which after the f3 knight went back to d2, then the knight is not defending anymore, and also that knight blocks the queen. So this is one possibility. Example, if white castles, then black can play immediately e5, attacking with one more pawn the d4 square, and then if white capture on e5, then black capture black, and then knight d4 will come, and then I think black has a better position already because of the very well placed knight. If white plays d5, then also can use the d4 square for the knight, with the idea later to play c7, c6, exchange the pawns, and then if exchange on d6, then maybe d6, d5, or if white don't capture, then capturing on d5, and when captured back, then with f7, f5 later can attack the center on the queen side. We can go back a little bit and look one more possibility for white after the 7th move, and that could be to play the bishop to d3. This move is good because develop the piece and also immediately defend the e4 pawn, which is many times vulnerable after black plays bishop b7. But black don't care much about this move. He just continue the development with bishop b7, and then plan to play the knight to d7, and then c pawn goes to c5, attacking the center, and later the e pawn also can go to e6 or e5, winning more space, and most of the time that gives very nice and solid position for black. If you look some more moves from this position, white castles, then knight bd7, queen d2, c5. If white plays d5, then black can play e6 to attack the center, and then the d5 pawn can be no more defended very well, I think. Or if it's defended, then also the e5 will be good for black. So c5, then if white capture on c5 with the d pawn, then black capture back with the d pawn. And if bishop h6, then we may play queen c7 to develop the queen, and I think this gives an okay position for black. Later can play rook d8, rook e8, maybe e7, e5. This gives fine position, I think. In this position also possible to advance the e pawn with the similar ideas. If white plays d5, then black attacks the center with c6. If captures on e5, then captures back, and later then develop the queen on e7, having control on d4 square, and this gives, I think, a quite good position. There is one more possibility for white, which is, I think, the most active and most powerful to play here in the 8th move, is bishop c4. On c4, the bishop looking on the g8 king, and maybe later he has to conquer on the center on the d5 and e6 squares. After this move, there will be a little bit strange setup. We play here with e7, e6, and after this move, black may try to play c7, c5, and anytime if d5 comes, then can immediately exchange on the d5 square. So there is no problem. For example, if you would play here bishop b7, castles, and now d5, and c5, d5, and now we could not play e6 because it would be hanging because of the double attack. But if we already played e6, then after d5 we just can capture on d5. So this is the reason why we started e6, and here white castle short. Then we play bishop b7, attacking the e4 pawn, and here white should solve the problem of the e4 pawn, can solve it with two main ways to block it. Block the diagonal with d4, d5, or can play with e4, e5. If he plays with e5, then we will capture with the pawn. If the pawn captures back, then queen takes d1, rook a d1, the knight goes back to d7, attacking the e5 pawn. And later we'll come to capturing on f3, and then black wins the e5 pawn by knight takes e5 because two pieces attacks already. So white should capture back with the knight. Then black can play knight c6, attacking the d4 pawn and also offering exchange of the knights. Knight c6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6. Queen e2 developing the queens. Queen c8, this is a nice maneuver, I think, following with queen b7. And then the queen has the attack on the long diagonal, controlling d4, e4 squares, and on g2 sometimes it has pressure. And this gives a nice position for black later with rook a d8. Later even c4, c5 or e6, e5 may come in, or the b pawn can march to b5, b4. So this happens if white plays e5. The other possibility is to close the bishop diagonal with d4, d5. What can we do after this? If long term white can very well block the bishop diagonal, then our b7 bishop would be a little bit dead. So that's the bad news. But the good news is we can exchange on d5. So e takes d5. The white must capture back on d5. And then we have the e file and the e4 square, and also we have pressure on the long diagonal, on the dark long diagonal, the a1, h8 diagonal, because of the d4 pawn move to d5. White sometimes can use very well his d4 square, so we should be careful. The rook e8, white plays rook e1, then knight b d7, develops the other knight, and then black may plan to play knight e5 or knight e4. Here white can choose which piece he wants to put to d4. If he put the knight to d4, then going maybe to c6, then black can play knight e4, and later can move the queen to h4. This is a very typical idea in this variation, to use the queen on the king side. Then the other knight can come to c5, and later maybe black play b6, b5, sometimes sacrificing the pawn, because then the d5 pawn will lose his defender. And I think this variation gives enough counterfeit for black. If white plays the bishop on d4, with the idea to neutralize the g7 bishop, controlling e5, I think we can exchange the rooks by rook takes e1, queen takes e1, and I think after this we can play queen f8, which I like, to play rook e8, idea to getting the control on the e file, and later the knight can come to c5, and later when we have control on e4 square, then we can also play knight f e4, and if the bishops exchange on g7, then we can capture back with the queen and following the pressure on the long diagonal. So we look the most important moves in this variation, just let us do a very quick review. So after h3, we plan to develop the bishop to b7 to have pressure on the e4 pawn. So after h3 we castles, then white should play bishop e3, because other way we would play c5 and then b5 to get the equality. If white plays bishop e3, then black plays e6 to prepare the advancing of the b pawn, and then bishop b4, bishop b7. If white prevents it with a4, then the bishop develops after b6, and later we follow the development of the pieces to b7. The knight most of the time go to d7, or in very special way when white develops the bishop on d3 and blocking the queen, then it may go to c6 later, and then to play e5. Also after b6, if the white develops the bishop to c4, then bishop b7, and if we would play bishop b7 here, then white would play d5, preventing e6. So after bishop c4, the important point to play e6 first, and then bishop b7, knight b d7, and this gives a quite playable position for black. And I think white has no real advantage, because black has developed all the pieces quite well and have enough pressure against the center. I wish you the best luck for this variation and for using by these ideas, and thank you for your attention in this lecture, and see you soon in another lectures. Bye bye.